He actually thinks I'm here for yoga, not for us.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the driveway concrete as Laurel's voice drifted through our kitchen window. She was on speakerphone again, probably painting her nails while gossiping with her sister Brielle. I swear, Brie, watching Trent work on that piece of junk truck is like watching a trained monkey perform tricks. Laurel laughed, her voice carrying that particular brand of cruelty she reserved for talking about me behind my back. He gets so proud of himself when he fixes something. It's almost cute in a pathetic way. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I froze under the hood of my Ford, my hands still wrapped around the alternator belt I'd been adjusting. 20 years of marriage, and I'd become the punchline in my wife's comedy routine. Does he still think you're going back to work? Brielle's voice crackled through the phone speaker. God, no. I told him I'm exploring my options and finding myself. He's too stupid to realize that means I'm never getting another job. Why would I? He pays for everything anyway. Laurel's laugh was sharp as broken glass. I've got him trained like a dog. He works 60-hour weeks at that disgusting warehouse, comes home exhausted, and I don't even have to pretend to appreciate it anymore. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. The alternator belt suddenly felt like a noose in my hands. What about that wellness coach you've been seeing? Aiden something? Brielle's tone turned conspiratorial. Aiden Mercer. God, Brie, you should see this man. Everything Trent isn't, sophisticated, spiritual, actually cares about his appearance. We've been doing private sessions 3 times a week. Laurel's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow made it even more audible. And I mean private. The wrench in my other hand started to bend under the pressure of my grip. Laurel, you're terrible, Brielle giggled. What if Trent finds out? Please, that man wouldn't notice if I tattooed cheater on my forehead. He's too busy being grateful that someone like me married someone like him. Besides, Aiden says I deserve better than a blue-collar loser who smells like motor oil and lives paycheck to paycheck. I wanted to storm into that kitchen and confront her right then, but something held me back. Maybe it was the part of me that still couldn't believe my wife of 20 years was capable of this level of betrayal. Or maybe it was the smarter part of my brain telling me to gather more information before I made my move. How long has this been going on? Brielle asked. 6 months, ever since I started going to his studio. Trent thinks I'm finally getting serious about fitness. Laurel snorted. I'm getting serious about something, all right. Aiden's helping me realize my worth. He says I'm wasting my prime years on a man who can't provide the lifestyle I deserve. Are you going to leave Trent? Eventually. But Aiden wants to make sure we're financially stable first. He's been teaching me about joint assets, credit lines, all that stuff. Did you know I can open credit cards in Trent's name without him knowing? His credit is actually pretty good from all those years of paying bills on time like the little worker bee he is. I quietly set down the wrench and pulled out my phone, hitting the voice recorder app. If she was stealing from me, I needed proof. That's brilliant. How much have you gotten so far? $12,000 across 4 cards. I told the companies I was his wife and that he'd asked me to handle our finances. They didn't even question it. Men like Trent are so predictable, they never check their credit reports. The phone shook in my hand. $12,000. 6 months of this betrayal, and she'd been stealing from me the entire time. What does Aiden think about all this? He's proud of me for taking control of my life. He says most women in my situation would just suffer in silence, but I'm strong enough to take what I deserve. We're planning to move in together once I've built up enough of a nest egg. With Trent's money? It's not stealing, Brie. I'm his wife. I've earned this money by putting up with his boring stories about work and his pathetic attempts at romance. Do you know he still brings me gas station flowers? Gas station flowers. Like I'm some teenager he's trying to impress. I remembered those flowers. I'd bought them every Friday for the past 3 years, thinking she enjoyed the surprise. Apparently, I'd been wrong about that too. So when are you planning to tell him? Aiden thinks we should wait until after Christmas. Let him pay for the holidays, you know? Then in January, I'll sit him down and explain that I've outgrown our marriage. I'll be kind, but firm. Maybe I'll even let him keep the house. I'll be moving into Aiden's condo downtown anyway. You've got it all figured out. I learned from the best. Remember how you handled your divorce from Mike? Clean, efficient, and profitable. They both laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. I'd always known Brielle was poison, but I'd thought Laurel was different. I'd thought she loved me. Speaking of Mike, he still asks about you sometimes. Says Trent's a lucky man. Mike always was sweet. Too bad he was broke. At least he had the decency to be good-looking while he was poor. Trent's got the worst of both worlds. No money and no looks. I caught my reflection in the truck's side mirror. 42 years old, graying hair, lines around my eyes from squinting in warehouse lighting. When had I become so easy to dismiss? Well, I should let you go, Brielle said. Got a date tonight with that lawyer I told you about. Have fun, and Brie, thanks for listening. I can't talk to anyone else about this. Aiden says it's important to keep our relationship private until the time is right. Your secret's safe with me. You deserve to be happy, Laurel. The call ended, and I heard Laurel's footsteps heading toward the living room. I quickly closed the voice recording app and slipped the phone back into my pocket. My hands were shaking as I picked up the wrench and pretended to work on the engine. 20 years. 20 years of working double shifts to pay for her shopping trips, her spa days, her girls' nights out, that I now realized probably weren't with girls at all. 20 years of believing I was lucky to have her, that I needed to work harder to deserve her love. The kitchen window was still open, and I could hear the TV turning on. Some reality show about housewives, probably. Laurel loved watching rich women fight with each other. I used to think it was harmless entertainment. Now I wondered if she was taking notes. I finished adjusting the belt and slammed the hood shut harder than necessary. The sound echoed through our quiet neighborhood like a gunshot. Mrs. Patterson next door peeked over her fence, probably wondering what all the noise was about. I gave her a wave and what I hoped looked like a normal smile. Inside the house, I could hear Laurel laughing at something on TV. The same laugh she'd used when describing my pathetic attempts at romance to her sister, the same laugh that used to make me feel like the luckiest man alive. I walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, grabbing a beer I probably couldn't afford thanks to Laurel's secret spending spree. She didn't look up from her show when I passed through the living room. How's the truck? She asked, her eyes still glued to the screen. Fixed, I said simply. Good. We need it running for my appointment tomorrow. Another appointment with Aiden, no doubt. I took a long drink of beer and studied my wife's profile. When had she become a stranger? When had I become the enemy? What kind of appointment? I asked. Just some wellness stuff. You wouldn't be interested. She was right about that. I wasn't interested in watching my wife plan my financial ruin with her lover, but I was very interested in stopping it. I finished my beer in silence and headed to our bedroom. Laurel's laptop was sitting open on her dresser, probably still logged into her email accounts. For the first time in our marriage, I was tempted to snoop. Instead, I lay down on our bed and stared at the ceiling. The voice recording was still on my phone, 43 minutes of my wife destroying our marriage one cruel word at a time. Evidence of adultery, theft, and conspiracy. Tomorrow, I'd start figuring out how to use it. The next evening, I sat in my truck across the street from Serenity Now Wellness Studio, watching Laurel's Honda Civic in the parking lot. According to the studio's website, all classes ended by 8 p.m. It was now 9:30, and her car hadn't moved. The building was one of those converted warehouses that gentrification had turned into something trendy. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a space full of mirrors, yoga mats, and motivational posters about finding your inner goddess. Very different from the actual warehouse where I spent my days moving inventory and managing shipping schedules. A light was on in what looked like a private office on the second floor. As I watched, two silhouettes moved past the window. One was definitely Laurel. I'd recognize that posture anywhere. The other was taller, broader, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Aiden Mercer. I'd looked him up online after overhearing yesterday's phone call. 36 years old, certified in something called holistic life coaching, and judging by his Instagram account, he'd never worked a day of manual labor in his life. His hands in those photos were softer than my wife's. My phone buzzed with a text from Laurel. Running late tonight. Don't wait up, XO. XO. She was texting me hugs and kisses while planning to destroy my life. The audacity was almost impressive. I grabbed the small digital camera I'd borrowed from work. We used them to document damaged shipments, and adjusted the zoom lens. If Laurel wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had all the pieces. The wait stretched on. I'd brought a thermos of coffee and a bag of gas station sandwiches, settling in for what might be a long night. This was familiar territory for me. Patience, observation, waiting for the right moment, skills you learned in the warehouse when you were tracking down missing inventory or figuring out why shipments were always late. At 10:15, the upstairs light went out. 5 minutes later, Aiden emerged from the building's side entrance. Even from across the street, I could see he was the kind of man who spent more on haircuts than I spent on groceries. Tall, lean in that yoga instructor way, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He walked to a silver BMW parked near the back of the lot. Of course it was a BMW. Men like Aiden didn't drive practical vehicles with payment plans and high mileage. They drove cars that made statements about their success and sophistication. Laurel came out 3 minutes later, looking around nervously before hurrying to her Honda. Her hair was mussed, her yoga outfit wrinkled in ways that had nothing to do with exercise. She sat in her car for a moment, probably checking her appearance in the rearview mirror before starting the engine. I followed her home from a distance, staying 3 cars back like they did in the movies. Not that it mattered. Laurel was too wrapped up in her own drama to notice if I'd been driving alongside her with a neon sign. She beat me home by 10 minutes, enough time to change clothes and pretend she'd been doing something innocent. When I walked through the front door, she was in the kitchen wearing different clothes and making herself a cup of tea. "How was your appointment?" I asked, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. "Good, really good, actually. Aiden thinks I'm making real progress with my flexibility." She didn't meet my eyes when she said it. "That's great, honey. You seem more relaxed lately." It wasn't entirely a lie. Laurel had been different over the past few months. More confident, more dismissive, more willing to spend money we didn't have on things she claimed she deserved. I'd attributed it to some kind of midlife awakening. Turned out I was half right. "I think I'm finally figuring out what I want from life," she said, still not looking at me. "Aiden says most people settle for less than they deserve because they're afraid to demand more." Sounds like a smart guy. He is. Very smart. Very successful. She finally looked at me, and there was something challenging in her expression. "He owns 3 wellness studios across the state, makes more in a month than most people make in a year." The comparison was subtle but clear. Aiden was successful. I was not. Aiden deserved a woman like Laurel. I did not. "Must be nice," I said evenly. "It is. He's taking me to that new restaurant downtown next week. The one with the French name that just got reviewed in the city paper." My stomach dropped. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. "That sounds expensive." "Don't worry about it. I've been saving up for my household budget." My household budget. The money I earned working 50-hour weeks in a warehouse so she could have wellness appointments with her lover and steal from our joint credit lines. Well, have fun, I said, because what else could I say? Confronting her now would only put her on guard. I needed more information, more evidence, more time to plan my response. That night, I lay in bed listening to Laurel shower. She was taking longer than usual, probably washing off the evidence of her evening activities. When she finally came to bed, she turned away from me immediately, claiming she was tired from her workout. I waited until her breathing became deep and regular, then carefully slipped out of bed. Laurel's purse was on the kitchen counter, and for the first time in our marriage, I went through it. Her wallet contained 3 credit cards I'd never seen before. All had my name on them as the primary account holder, but the addresses were slightly different from ours, probably to make sure the bills didn't come to our house. The balances, based on the receipts I found, were even higher than she'd admitted to Brielle. It looked like she was closing in on $20,000 of debt. There were also receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, lingerie stores I'd never heard of, and a jewelry store downtown. One receipt was for a men's watch that cost more than I made in a month. A gift for Aiden, probably. My hands were shaking as I photographed everything with my phone. 20 years of marriage, and my wife had become a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a source of income to fund her affair. I put everything back exactly where I'd found it and returned to bed. Laurel was still sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about her new life with her successful, sophisticated lover. But I was done sleeping. I had work to do. The next Saturday, I decided to test the waters with our social circle. Laurel was at another wellness appointment, which gave me a chance to drop by Dave and Jennifer Morrison's barbecue without her running interference. Dave had been my best friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world with nothing but determination and bad judgment. Now he sold insurance, and I managed warehouse logistics, but we still got together every few weeks to drink beer and pretend we were still 25. The Morrisons' backyard was full of the usual suspects. Couples from our neighborhood, people we'd known for years, the kind of friends who remembered your anniversary and invited you to their kids' graduation parties. Normal people living normal lives. "Trent, where's Laurel?" Jennifer hugged me and looked around expectantly. "She's usually the life of the party." "Wellness appointment," I said, accepting a beer from Dave. "She's really gotten into this holistic health thing lately." "Good for her," said Carol Stevens, wife of my former coworker Mike. "It's never too late to prioritize self-care. I keep telling Mike he should try yoga, but he says he's too old to start bending into pretzel shapes." "Speaking of Laurel," Dave said, lowering his voice, "Jennifer ran into her sister Brielle at the mall last week. Sounds like Laurel's really coming into her own lately." My grip tightened on the beer bottle. "What do you mean?" Jennifer and Dave exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. "Well, Brielle mentioned that Laurel's been talking about making some big changes in her life, finding herself, exploring new opportunities." "That's great," I said carefully. "She's been restless lately. I'm glad she's found something that makes her happy." The thing is, Jennifer continued, her voice dropping to that tone women used when they were about to share gossip they probably shouldn't, Brielle seemed to think that these changes might affect your marriage. The barbecue sounds around us, laughter, conversation, the sizzle of burgers on the grill, suddenly felt very far away. What exactly did she say? Dave put a hand on my shoulder. Look, man, it's probably nothing. You know how Brielle is. She loves drama. But she mentioned something about Laurel seeing a life coach who's been helping her realize her potential. A life coach? Some guy named Aiden. Apparently, he's been helping her understand that she's been settling for less than she deserves. Jennifer's expression was sympathetic but uncomfortable. Brielle made it sound like Laurel might be questioning whether your marriage is holding her back from achieving her goals. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like metal. Our friends knew. Laurel's sister was spreading the story of my humiliation to anyone who would listen, probably with Laurel's permission. Did Brielle say anything else? Another look passed between Dave and Jennifer. This one was worse than the first. She mentioned that Laurel's been learning about financial independence, Dave said quietly. Taking control of her own money, building credit in her name, that sort of thing. They knew about the credit cards. They knew about the theft. And they were trying to warn me without directly saying that my wife was stealing from me to fund her affair. I appreciate you telling me, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I'll talk to Laurel about it. Trent, Jennifer said gently, we love you both. If there's anything we can do to help, thanks, really. But I think Laurel and I can work through whatever this is. I stayed at the barbecue for another hour, making small talk and pretending everything was normal. But I could feel the weight of their sympathy, their pity, their knowledge that my marriage was falling apart while I played the role of the clueless husband. On the drive home, I called my brother Danny in Phoenix. If our friends knew, I needed to control the narrative before it spread any further. Trent, how are things in the frozen tundra? Danny's voice was warm and familiar, a reminder of family loyalty in a world where my wife was systematically destroying my life. Could be better, actually. I need some advice. Shoot. I gave him the condensed version. The overheard phone call, the credit card fraud, the affair, the planned abandonment. Danny listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. Jesus, Trent. How long has this been going on? 6 months that I know of. Maybe longer. What are you going to do? I'm not sure yet. I'm gathering evidence, trying to figure out my options. You need a lawyer. I know, but I also need to be smart about this. If I tip my hand too early, she'll clean out what's left of our accounts and disappear. What about your friends? Do they know? I told him about the conversation at the barbecue. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Trent, I'm going to say something you probably don't want to hear. Go ahead. If your friends know what's happening and they're still treating this like some kind of marital rough patch that you can work through, they're not really your friends. They're spectators watching your life fall apart. His words hit harder than I expected. They were trying to warn me. They were trying to make themselves feel better about knowing and not doing anything to help. There's a difference. That night, Laurel came home from her appointment glowing with satisfaction. She hummed while making herself dinner, not bothering to ask if I was hungry, and spent the evening texting someone while watching TV. Good session today? I asked during a commercial break. The best yet. Aiden says I'm ready to start the next phase of my journey. What's the next phase? She looked at me with something that might have been pity. Self-actualization. Becoming the person I was meant to be instead of the person I settled for being. Sounds intense. It is. It means making some hard choices about what I want my future to look like. We stared at each other across the living room, and I realized we were having two different conversations. She thought she was preparing me for the inevitable end of our marriage. I was preparing for war. Well, I said finally, I hope you find what you're looking for. I already have, she said, turning back to her phone. Now it's just a matter of having the courage to reach for it. That courage, I knew, would be funded by credit cards opened in my name and supported by friends who were too polite to call theft what it was. But Laurel had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I would react to betrayal the way I'd reacted to everything else in our marriage, with patience, understanding, and a willingness to put her needs ahead of my own. She was about to learn how wrong she was. 2 weeks later, I was ready to make my move. I'd documented everything, the credit card fraud, the affair, the conspiracy with her sister to destroy our marriage. I'd also made some moves of my own that Laurel didn't know about yet. The opportunity came on a Thursday evening when Laurel announced she was having dinner with some girlfriends to celebrate Jennifer Morrison's birthday. I knew for a fact that Jennifer's birthday was in March, and it was currently October. Osh, have fun, I said, kissing her cheek like the devoted husband I'd been pretending to be. Don't stay out too late. Don't wait up. We might go dancing after dinner. Dancing. Right. I was pretty sure the only dancing she'd be doing would be horizontal. I waited 30 minutes after she left, then drove to the Morrisons' house. Dave answered the door in pajama pants and a ratty t-shirt, clearly settled in for the evening. Trent? What's up, man? Is Jennifer around? Laurel said she was celebrating Jennifer's birthday tonight, but she forgot to tell me where they were going. I wanted to send over a bottle of champagne. Dave's face went through several expressions before settling on uncomfortable confusion. Trent, Jennifer's upstairs with a stomach bug. She's been sick all day. Huh, that's weird. Laurel was very specific about the birthday dinner. We stared at each other for a moment. Dave was a good man, but he was also conflict-averse and terrible at lying. Maybe there was some confusion, he offered weakly. Maybe, or maybe my wife is lying to me about where she's spending her evenings. Dave's shoulders sagged. Trent, it's okay, Dave. I know about Aiden. I know about the affair. I know about the credit cards she's opened in my name. I know about all of it. Jesus, how long have you known? Long enough. The question is, how long have you known? He ran a hand through his hair, looking miserable. Jennifer heard rumors about 6 weeks ago. We didn't know how to tell you, or even if we should tell you. We kept hoping it would fizzle out on its own. 6 weeks. So you've known my wife was cheating on me and stealing from me for 6 weeks, and you said nothing. We didn't know what to do. Jennifer wanted to confront Laurel directly, but I thought that might make things worse. We figured if it was serious, you'd find out eventually, and if it wasn't, then we'd just be causing drama for no reason. I nodded slowly. I understand. It's a difficult position to be in. Dave looked relieved. Exactly. We didn't want to get in the middle of your marriage unless we absolutely had to. The thing is, Dave, we're not talking about a marriage anymore. We're talking about fraud, theft, and conspiracy, and you chose to protect the person committing crimes against me instead of warning the victim. His face went pale. Trent, it's not like that. It's exactly like that. You had information that could have saved me months of financial damage, and you kept quiet because it was easier than getting involved. What are you going to do? I'm going to handle it, but I want you to know that our friendship is over. 25 years of history, and when I needed you most, you chose to protect my wife's feelings instead of my financial security. I turned to leave, but Dave grabbed my arm. Trent, wait. Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something out. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. There's nothing to work out. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I drove home and called Mike Stevens. The conversation went almost exactly the same way, except Mike had the decency to be angry about the situation. I told Carol we should have said something immediately, he said. This is bullshit, Trent. You deserve to know. You're right. I did deserve to know. But you didn't tell me, so now I'm telling you. Stay out of my way while I clean up this mess. What does that mean? It means that when this all comes out, and it's going to come out very publicly, don't pretend you were on my side. You had your chance to be on my side. By the time Laurel came home at midnight, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine, I'd severed relationships with most of our social circle, the people who'd known about her betrayal and chosen to protect her instead of me. How was Jennifer's birthday? I asked from the couch, where I'd been waiting with a glass of whiskey and a folder full of evidence. It was nice. Quiet. She's not feeling well, so we just had a quick dinner. That's funny. I stopped by Dave's house earlier to drop off a birthday card. He said Jennifer's been sick in bed all day. Laurel froze in the doorway, her purse still clutched in her hand. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. I must have misunderstood, she said carefully. Maybe it was someone else's birthday. Laurel, sit down. We need to talk. It's late, Trent. Can't this wait until tomorrow? No, it can't. She sat on the edge of the chair across from me, still holding her purse like a shield. What's this about? I opened the folder and pulled out the first photograph. A picture of her and Aiden leaving his BMW at the motel on Elm Street. This is about the fact that you've been lying to me for months. Her face went white, then red, then white again. Trent, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things. Like how you explained to your sister that I was too stupid to notice you were stealing from me. I pulled out the second photograph, copies of the credit card statements. $23,000, Laurel. That's how much you've stolen from me to fund your affair. It's not stealing. I'm your wife. You're my wife who's planning to leave me for another man. You're my wife who's been opening credit accounts in my name without my knowledge. You're my wife who's been laughing about my stupidity with your sister and your lover. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of her conversation with Brielle. Laurel's voice filled the room, cruel and dismissive, describing me as a trained monkey and a blue-collar loser. When it finished, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. How long have you been recording me? Long enough. The question is, what are we going to do about this? Laurel's fear was transforming into something else. Anger, defiance, the look of someone who'd been caught but wasn't ready to surrender. What do you want, Trent? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I fell in love with someone else. I'm sorry I found someone who appreciates me for who I am instead of treating me like a burden. I'm sorry I took some money to build a life that doesn't revolve around your schedule and your limitations. Some money? $23,000 isn't some money, Laurel. It's felony theft. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own wife. I smiled, and something in my expression made her lean back in her chair. You're right. I wouldn't press charges against my wife, but I might press charges against my ex-wife who defrauded me to support her affair. You can't divorce me over this. It's just a rough patch. Couples work through these things all the time. Couples work through rough patches. They don't work through systematic theft, adultery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Laurel stood up abruptly, her purse falling to the floor. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I'm having an affair. Yes, I used our credit to build a better life for myself. And yes, I'm leaving you. Aiden and I are in love, and we're going to be together whether you like it or not. When? When what? When are you leaving? She lifted her chin defiantly. After Christmas. We're going to start fresh in the new year. No, I said calmly. You're leaving tonight. What? I pulled the final document from my folder, an eviction notice I'd had prepared by a lawyer that afternoon. I've changed the locks. Your clothes are in suitcases on the front porch. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. You can't do this. This is my house, too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name only. We bought it before we were married, and you never signed the deed. Legally, you're a tenant, and I'm terminating your tenancy. Laurel stared at the eviction notice like it was written in a foreign language. This is insane. You can't just throw me out with no warning. I'm giving you the same amount of warning you were planning to give me. The difference is, I'm not stealing from you to finance my exit strategy. She looked around our living room, at the furniture we'd bought together, the pictures of our life, the accumulation of 20 years of marriage, and for a moment, I thought, she might cry. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and grabbed her purse from the floor. Fine, but don't think this is over. I'll fight you for everything. The house, the cars, half of your retirement account. I'll make sure you regret this. Good luck with that. It's hard to claim marital assets when you're facing felony fraud charges. I walked her to the front door and watched her load her suitcases into her Honda. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no second thoughts. 20 years of marriage, and it ended with my wife driving away to spend the night with her lover, funded by money she'd stolen from me. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. 3 months later, I was ready for the final act. Laurel had moved in with Aiden, just as planned, and they'd been living their sophisticated life in his downtown condo while the divorce proceedings crawled through the court system. She'd hired an expensive lawyer with money from the credit cards she'd maxed out in my name, confident that she could claim half of everything I'd worked for. What she didn't know was that I'd been busy too. The opportunity came when Aiden decided to throw a housewarming party to show off his new live-in girlfriend to his wellness community friends. Laurel had been posting about it on social media for weeks. Photos of expensive decorations, catered food, and her new wardrobe funded by stolen credit. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I didn't need an invitation for what I had planned. The party was on a Saturday night in February. I knew because Laurel had been bragging about it to anyone who would listen, including the lawyer handling our divorce. She wanted me to know how well she was doing, how much happier she was, how much better her life had become since she'd found the courage to leave her limiting marriage. At 8 p.m., while their party was in full swing, I drove to Aiden's building and parked across the street. The condo was on the 15th floor, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see silhouettes of people mingling, drinking, celebrating Laurel's successful transition from warehouse wife to wellness queen. I pulled out my phone and opened the app I'd been working on for 3 months. It had taken some research and a few favors from tech-savvy coworkers, but I'd finally figured out how to simultaneously send information to multiple recipients. The first message went to everyone at the party. I'd gotten their contact information from Aiden's business website and Laurel's social media accounts. The message contained a link to a private website I'd created, along with a simple note: the truth about Laurel and Aiden. The second message went to Aiden's business partners, his other wellness studio locations, and his professional network. Same link, different note. Fraud alert, Aiden Mercer and associate. The third message went to our former friends, Dave and Jennifer, Mike and Carol, everyone who'd known about Laurel's affair and chosen to stay silent. Their note read, "You wanted to stay out of it. Here's what staying out of it accomplished." The website was simple but comprehensive. It contained copies of all the credit card statements showing Laurel's theft, recordings of her phone conversations with her sister, photographs of her and Aiden together, and a detailed timeline of their affair. But the centerpiece was a video I'd recorded the week before. I'd hired a private investigator to approach Aiden at his wellness studio, posing as a potential business partner. The conversation, recorded with Aiden's knowledge — he'd signed a release thinking it was for a promotional video — revealed everything. Aiden bragging about how easy it had been to seduce a lonely housewife, how he'd coached her to steal from her husband, how they'd planned the whole thing as a way to fund their new life together. The beauty of it, Aiden said in the video, is that guys like her husband never see it coming. They're so grateful to have a woman like Laurel that they don't question anything. We probably could have taken twice as much if we'd been more patient. The investigator had asked about the emotional toll on Laurel, pretending to be concerned about the ethics of the situation. "Please," Aiden laughed. "Laurel's loving every minute of this. She gets to play the victim of a bad marriage while living like a queen on someone else's money. She's not conflicted about it. She thinks she deserves it." By 8:15, my phone was buzzing with responses. The first few were from people at the party, asking if the website was some kind of joke. Then came messages from Aiden's business associates, expressing concern about the allegations. Finally, our former friends started weighing in, some apologetic, others defensive, all of them shocked by the scope of what they had helped cover up. I sat in my truck and watched the windows of Aiden's condo. The party seemed to be continuing normally, but I knew it wouldn't last long. In the age of smartphones and social media, scandalous information traveled fast. At 8:32, I saw the first sign that my plan was working. A group of people near the windows were looking at their phones, their body language shifting from casual party mode to concerned huddle. One of them appeared to be showing something to others, and I could see heads turning toward where Laurel and Aiden were presumably standing. My phone rang. Laurel's number. "You bastard!" she screamed before I could say hello. "What did you do?" "I told the truth. I thought you'd appreciate that. Isn't honesty supposed to be important in relationships?" "You've ruined everything. Aiden's business partners are threatening to pull out of their deals. People are leaving the party. His ex-wife is threatening to use this in their custody battle." Sounds like actions have consequences. Who knew? This is insane. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're angry about a divorce. "I'm not angry about a divorce, Laurel. I'm angry about theft, fraud, and conspiracy. The divorce is just paperwork." Through the condo windows, I could see the party was definitely winding down. People were gathering their coats and heading for the door. The celebration of Laurel's new life was turning into a wake for Aiden's reputation. "What do you want?" Laurel's voice was desperate now. "Money? I'll pay back every penny. Just take down that website." "It's too late for that. The information is already out there. Screenshots, downloads, forwards. You can't put this genie back in the bottle." "Please, Trent. I know I hurt you, but this is too much. You're destroying innocent people." "Innocent people? Aiden coached you to steal from me. He bragged about it to a stranger. And you've spent months telling anyone who would listen that I was a pathetic husband who deserved what he got. Neither of you is innocent." I could hear voices in the background, people arguing, someone crying. The sophisticated life Laurel had built with stolen money was crumbling in real time. "I'll do anything," she said. "I'll sign whatever divorce papers you want. I'll give up any claim to your assets. I'll disappear if that's what you want. You're going to do all of that anyway. The difference is, now you're doing it because you have no choice, not because you're being generous." I hung up and started my truck. The party was over, and so was my marriage. But more importantly, so was my patience with people who thought they could use me and discard me without consequences. The next morning, I woke up to 17 voicemails, 43 text messages, and 68 emails. Laurel's sister Brielle had left 3 increasingly frantic messages begging me to be reasonable. Dave Morrison had sent a long email apologizing for not warning me about the affair and asking if we could work past this. Even Aiden had tried to call, probably hoping to negotiate some kind of damage control. I deleted everything without responding. The local newspaper picked up the story 3 days later, not because of the affair, that was small-town gossip, but because of the fraud angle. Local woman charged with identity theft in elaborate affair scheme ran on the front page of the community section, complete with Laurel's booking photo and a detailed explanation of how she'd stolen more than $25,000 to fund her new relationship. Aiden's wellness empire collapsed within 2 weeks. His business partners severed ties, his other studios closed, and his professional reputation was destroyed. The last I heard, He was working at a chain gym in another state, leading aerobics classes for $15 an hour. Laurel pled guilty to identity theft and fraud charges in exchange for probation and restitution payments. She moved back in with her parents and got a job at a call center, earning barely enough to cover her legal fees and the money she owed me. Our former friends tried to rebuild bridges, but I wasn't interested. They'd had their chance to do the right thing, and they'd chosen to protect my wife's feelings instead of my financial security. As far as I was concerned, they'd made their choice and could live with the consequences. 6 months after that February night, I was sitting in my backyard, grilling a steak and drinking a beer I could actually afford now that I wasn't supporting Laurel's lifestyle. The house was quiet, the bills were manageable, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of funding someone else's dreams. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy with what you've done." I looked at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Happiness wasn't really the point. Justice was the point. Consequences were the point. Making sure that people who thought they could use and discard others learned that actions have prices. I finished my steak, cleaned the grill, and went inside to watch a movie I'd actually wanted to see. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't have to ask anyone's permission or consider anyone else's preferences. It was, I realized, exactly what I deserved. 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 I deserved.